Joining me on the phones right now, U.S. Senator John Cornyn, who will be in Lubbock just here in a few hours, in fact. Senator Cornyn, welcome back to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Chad. Looking forward to being in Lubbock this afternoon.
Well, you are going to be in Lubbock today, and this your visit ties in with the Mental Health and Safety Communities Act that you have sponsored. Tell folks about that and about your trip to Lubbock today.
Well, unfortunately, people with mental illness often end up homeless and living on the streets or crowding emergency rooms, seeking care for numerous complaints, both real and imagined, or in our jails. And we've learned that there's a better way to deal with mental illness, but a lot of it has to do with people simply following their doctor's orders and complying with their doctor's orders to take their medication, because it's come a long way. But this really came to my attention as a result of some really successful programs in places like San Antonio, Texas, where the sheriff there, Sheriff Parmelo, had worked with other healthcare providers, others in the community, to try to divert people who are being arrested for relatively minor crimes like trespass out of the criminal justice system and into a treatment, which is better for them. It's cheaper for the taxpayers, and just seems like a more sensible way to deal with mental illness.
Visiting with U.S. Senator John Cornyn today. You'll be in Lubbock, and you'll be meeting with a few organizations today, correct, regarding mental illness?
That's right. We'll be at the Community Health Center of Lubbock this afternoon about 3 o'clock, and we'll be meeting with the CEO there, as well as local officials. The mayor will be there, the county judge, and other folks who are involved in the Community Health Center there and dealing with the mental illness challenge.
What is the topic of mental illness and mental health? It seems it's been one of those that a lot of folks don't really want to talk about.
Right.
But it's becoming more acceptable to talk about in recent years. Tell us about that end of things and the reception that you're having from fellow members of the Senate.
Well, I've come to realize that it's almost every family in the country has somebody or knows somebody who has mental health challenges. And when it comes to law enforcement, many times law enforcement has been unprepared to deal with people with mental illness. The police officers just haven't been trained, and so getting the right kind of training so they can de-escalate the confrontation so nobody gets hurt is very important. But really what kind of got my attention beyond the successful programs in San Antonio and places like Lubbock and elsewhere is the fact that so many people with mental illness have been implicated in some of these incidents of mass violence, like in Connecticut, like out in Aurora, Colorado, other places where people with mental illness get guns, and, of course, somebody who is actually mentally ill is not supposed to be able to get access to a firearm. So we've actually looked at trying to improve the background check program in many states where simply those kinds of records aren't uploaded into the FBI's background check system. We're not talking about expanding it, but we're talking about actually making it work the way it should, and at the same time respecting the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens.
Is this something, one of the, and I'm sure you've heard these concerns as well, Senator, from folks who are worried, particularly with this administration, that if someone goes to a doctor and they say that they've been depressed, that a doctor may in turn report to the FBI, hey, this person shouldn't be allowed to buy guns. Have you heard that concern, and is that a road that we could be heading down, and how does this legislation differ from what we've heard from the administration maybe?
Well, I understand why people may be concerned given some of the rhetoric and the actions, the executive actions and the overreach by the administration. But actually, it would be illegal for a doctor to reveal that sort of private health information under current laws. What we're trying to do, Chad, is there actually have been some reported instances where veterans have sought assistance with their financial affairs, or seniors have sought assistance with their Social Security benefits, and that have been reported by those government officials, not their doctors, and been limited in terms of their ability to take advantage of their Second Amendment rights. So, part of what we've also included in this legislation is a requirement of due process. In other words, if the government's going to try to make the case that somebody is not mentally competent to own a firearm, that they're going to have to go before an impartial judge and produce evidence, not just based on mere suspicion or sort of categorizing people in ways that aren't fair.
Visiting with U.S. Senator John Cornyn. You also have another piece of legislation out that I'd like to get an update from you and for the listeners out there, the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act.
Yeah, this is a bill that passed the United States Senate. All 100 senators essentially supported it, and now it's in the House of Representatives. All this does is it changes a 1976 statute, the Foreign Sovereign Immunity Act, which says that if somebody finances or facilitates a terrorist attack on American soil, then they can be subject to a lawsuit in American courts. Of course, this is most often talked about in the context of the 9/11 families who have believed that some people in the Saudi government have been involved or were involved in that terrorist attack, and but have been denied access to the courts to pursue those claims because of the Sovereign Immunity Act. So this just opens the courthouse door to those sorts of claims. It has to be an attack on American soil and by somebody who facilitates that terrorist attack, either by financing it or otherwise helping it occur.
The Saudis obviously have not been looking at this in a favorable way, this act. I think that's one way to say it. Yeah. What have you heard from the Obama administration regarding this? Is the president likely to sign off on this piece of legislation if it makes it through the House?
Well, I think the president's torn. You know, after the misguided Iran nuclear deal, Chad, the president realized that our relationship with Saudi Arabia was really at an all-time low. This is an existential threat to Sunni countries like Saudi Arabia. But as you know, our relationships with many countries in the Middle East is complicated. Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and while we have worked with them on some issues, we also know they present challenges to our own national security, so we have to be clear-eyed about how we deal with them. But the idea that after the misguided Iran nuclear deal that somehow we're going to sacrifice the rights of 9/11 victims of terrorist attacks and deny them access to justice is just simply, I'm just unwilling to ask them to pay that price. And I think we should proceed, and there's a way for the president to veto it if he doesn't like it, and there's a way for the Senate and the House to override the veto.
I have two more questions for you regarding one of them regarding the 2016 presidential race. The first one regarding one of your colleagues, Senator Ted Cruz. There have been a few reports out this week that he's looking to go back to the Senate and try to repair some relationships with some of your fellow senators there in Washington, D.C. In your opinion, if and I'm sure you and Senator Cruz have talked and talk often, what advice would you give to him on how to repair some of those relationships in the Senate?
Well, obviously, Ted's been involved in a presidential primary, and I know he's obviously disappointed having fallen short. But I think he ran a credible campaign and one that surprised a lot of people how close he came. Nobody figured on the Trump factor this year, and 17 candidates running for the presidential nomination on the Republican side. So my advice would be to come back to the Senate and do the work that he and I were both elected to do, representing the 27 million people of the state of Texas. Relationships are important in life and in politics, and so I'm sure that people would appreciate his outreach, and I'm sure they would reciprocate.
Final question for you as we look towards the presidential election. There's still talk of a third-party candidate maybe jumping into this thing. Is that something that Republicans should even look at right now, or is this a race truly between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and a third-party candidate would just really elevate Hillary Clinton into the White House, or whoever the Democratic nominee will be?
Yeah, I don't really know what these people are thinking who are promoting the idea of a third-party candidate. As you point out, the last time something like that happened, it elected the Democrat because it divides Republicans and conservatives. And the other part of it is I think we have to respect the primary election process and the choices of the voters. I believe it's sort of like retail sales. The customer is always right. In politics, the voters have a right to express their view, and they have here, and they've chosen the presumptive nominee. And I think we need to respect that and support the nominee.
U.S. Senator John Cornyn, we look forward to having you here in Lubbock here in a few hours, and hope your visit goes well.
Thanks, Chad. Good to be with you.
Good to have you on the show. That's U.S. Senator John Cornyn.